Novelist Catherine Trammell is once again in trouble with the law, and Scotland Yard appoints psychiatrist Dr. Michael Glass to evaluate her. Though, like Detective Nick Curran before him, Glass is entranced by Trammell and lured into a seductive game. I should make it known that this review comes from the perspective of someone who has not seen the original Paul Verhoeven film, and whose only interest in it comes from its overwhelmingly negative critical reception upon release. So bad it's good, you say? Hold my pan. Much like the 2002 remake of Rollerball, another box office bomb I reviewed in this series, Basic Instinct 2 is reported to have had an elongated and deeply troubled production history spanning 6 years, mostly revolving around Sharon Stone's ego and, understandably, hesitation. Numerous recastings and one class action lawsuit later, Basic Instinct 2 made its way into cinemas, and unsurprisingly that's the most remarkable thing you can say about this film, that it exists. Because several decent performances and the okay script aside, there is no avoiding the sense that Basic Instinct 2 was the Justice League of its time. Let's get the awful out the way first, shall we? The cinematography in this is extremely flat. Considering the $17 million budget, it's amazing how much actually went onto background artists, and not a more elaborate lighting plan or a more ambitious shot composition. I can't really pinpoint what makes this film look cheap, but it does. It looks like an expensive Cinemax movie and no more. Though the story is good as a boilerplate thriller, the plot twists are still ludicrous and some dialogue truly autistic. It's bad, just not bad enough to be thoroughly entertaining throughout. Now let's move on to the good. The characters are merely functionable, but they are well acted. David Forelis was a particular highlight I found. The score is polished, the editing is on point, and as a result, the pacing is tight. The reason why the plot in this film is so infamously stupid. The craft was fun enough that people would be engrossed enough and actually acknowledge that sort of thing. Rounding this off, I'll say that Basic Instinct 2 is nowhere near the unsalvageable bomb it was seen at its time of release, more or less entirely due to the cast who all understood what kind of film they were in. But it still features an unremarkable story, moronic dialogue, and artless cinematography, and in no way should be seen as anything but a film that outstayed its welcome 10 years before it was even made. Combine Twin Peaks, Brian De Palma's Sisters, and the latest Disney Channel star to fall off the production line with a no nudity clause in her contract, and you have one of the most poorly received suspense thrillers of the 2000s. Us, this is not... or it could be, I haven't seen the fucking film, as Lindsay Lohan stars in I Know Who Killed Me. The film's rather basic story revolves around the student's twin who was abducted and tortured by a sadistic serial killer. She manages to make it out alive, but after she regains consciousness in the hospital, she insists that her identity is that of another woman. The music score by Joel McNeely is as Hollywood as they come, and it ranges from ill-fitting orchestral melodies to just plain unlistenable clanging on a fucking piano. Parts of this soundtrack are some of the worst that I've ever heard in an internationally released film. Director Chris Sivertson splooged his VHS collection all over the screen and blinded us all so that we can't make head or tail of what's going on half of the time. There are other reasons why this film is both equal parts predictable yet incomprehensible, and we'll get to those, but for now it must be said that the director's visual platitudes make the eyes grow weary with their pointlessness, and them serving as reminders that there are several films out there much better and doing more or less the same thing in both story and presentation. Apart from Lohan's desperate attempts at credibility, torture porn being shoehorned into this chaste old school thriller is the most 2008 thing about this film. Whilst these scenes are effective, they serve no purpose and just date the film in the most hilarious and original way. Coming now to the unsung hero of I Know Who Killed Me's staggering clusterfuckery is the screenplay by first and last time apparently writer Jeff Hammond. The dialogue is wall-smashing levels of on the nose, and beyond belief is the film's overall concept, most likely due to the complete absence of likable characters to distract us from its high-concept spastication. Lindsay Lohan is terrible in this. clearly relying on the bratty charm that worked for her in the Disney period of her career, but was woefully out of place in this edgy as balls unquote erotic thriller. Speaking of which, like I already said, there was a no nudity clause in her contract, yet there is a lengthy sex scene as well as extended pole dancing scenes with her. The skill finesse of an actress should never be defined by her cock size, but why even have these scenes when their purpose is to be erotic? Nudity also definitely would have gone a long way towards helping Lohan shake off the Disney dandruff. Sadly, it's all perfectly understandable. Lohan was going through a really bad time in her life at this point when the film was being made, with TMZ shadowing her every move and encouraging her ever increasingly self-destructive behaviour. It was a disgraceful scene that showed a side of the film industry everyone would have liked to forget exist. Until Twitter happened, that is, and made paparazzi scum out of you all. Nude scenes probably would have just fanned the flames regarding Lohan's situation in the late 2000s. I'll conclude by saying that I Know Who Killed Me is total amateur hour, despite having a lot of veteran Hollywood talent working on it. Lohan is hopelessly immature, the direction is insipid, and the screenplay is a mess. Some scenes are effective, but only by pure luck alone. Overall, the film is just aimless tedium. Goddess of Love is about a mentally unstable woman who begins a volatile descent into madness when she suspects her lover has left her for another woman. Co-written by its star Alexis Kendra, Goddess of Love is a showcase of her skills as well as that of cinematographer-director John Nuts. It's a psychosexual thriller that is a fair bit pretentious, with scenes that play out more like acting workshops and shots that linger a little too long for the sake of just being pretty. Unfortunately, it's a pretentiousness that is kind of earned, as overall this is a finely acted, very well shot film. What my issue is with the film is that it does nothing new with the urban paranoia thriller. This has Polanski's neurotic stench written all over it, and that was off-putting for me. Personally, I preferred this film when the lead was Zoe Lund and the catharsis at hand was an automatic pistol and not just a crack pipe. As it is, Goddess of Love as an experience is much like its protagonist in that it's hard to get along with, but you feel inclined anyway by the end. It's far better than the majority of horror thrillers of equal size, but it doesn't do enough to connect with a modern audience. In 1966, this would have been a triumph. In 2016, its black comedy was way dated and the tropes were too overexposed, and finally, it said nothing about the world it was made in at the time, even to the point of reducing the ever-increasing American homeless to a lazy framing device, all in the service of telling the tired tale of a white metropolitan girl's battle with chronic insert screenwriter's favourite personal problem here. Right, time to see which of these films is worth your time. Well, none of them actually are, but Basic Instinct 2 is one of cinema's most insipid sequels, with storytelling that is retarded and high production values which are squandered on lackluster camera work. I Know Who Killed Me is right up there with Basic Instinct 2 as one of the worst thrillers of the 2000s, and Goddess of Love is a well-crafted psychosexual thriller that unfortunately fails to give us a proper reason to care. Goodbye.